Malone forgot the address, but he didn't need to consult the slip of paper when he turned onto Nixon Road. He knew the house in an instant. His faulty, damaged, tau protein-infested memory that couldn't remember where he had eaten dinner, while still digesting, could recognize this Cheswick home for its unknown significance. Whatever Marianne had seen in real life, Malone had seen in his head. As he approached, a woman waved at him from the tiny concrete porch atop the 3 steps that led to the door. Beaming, happy, looking at him as she would at a child. Her attitude was infectious. The vision of the woman dissipated, and with it her light and the beauty of the place. He saw it for what it was. When it was sunny and the woman was waving, the 1960s one-story brick home was not unlike the home in which Malone grew up. Now it was abandoned. If this suburb hadn't been annexed by gangland, the people would have reported the overgrown lawn. Trees hit by lightning lay on the property. But it wasn't in such a state of disrepair as to appear out of the ordinary for this neighborhood. It was the average Cheswick shithole. Though bushes and branches crowded the lawn, they were conveniently on either side of the concrete walkway. Someone had made a path. Malone used it. He knocked on the door. No response. Malone jiggled the doorknob. Locked. He had no jurisdiction, save the permission granted by the maelstrom. No weapon but his fists that had done a lot of damage in their day. No probable cause, no reason why he was there. Nothing to lose. He punched his reconstructive hand through the small glass window in the door. Glass offered less resistance to his fist than a skull. His wingspan proved just as useful reaching through the window to turn the doorknob as it did to hold an opponent at a distance while he drifted in small circles on the ice. Malone entered the house. Darkness, except for the partial sunlight coming through the windows, greeted him. He flipped a switch on the wall. The home illuminated. Someone had been keeping the lights on. The house was neat but not clean. The furniture was old, dated, and plain. A red toy fire truck was in the corner of the living room with tiny versions of cars from the not-so-distant past. Anachronisms, like everything else in this house, the hulking, brain-damaged goon included. Malone entered the kitchen. Certain rectangular areas on the fridge were wider than others. He swung open the door. A gallon of milk that had expired a month ago, packaged meals in the freezer, a partially drunk bottle of whiskey on the counter. He could see a man chugging it straight from the bottle with the enthusiasm of one trying to forget. This wasn't party whiskey the way Malone used it. It was a memory eraser, the side effect that Malone lived with. Someone was here until recently, but it couldn't have been more than a few. It was a shame. 3-bedroom affairs like this often has 2 families. Malone's entire apartment was the size of the living room and foyer. When the people or the gangs noticed this place was uninhabited, it would be windfall for a young, expectant couple like those living in the above-ground parts of Malone's house. He opened the door at the rear of the kitchen and walked down the stairway to the basement. He ducked his head at the bottom of the steps. Maybe it was instinct from being 6'5" since he was 16, subconsciously aware that ceilings are most perilous at the bottom of basement stairwells. He felt around the wall until he found a light switch. He had narrowly avoided a ceiling dangerous to those tall and prone to head injury. The room was partially finished. It wasn't the type of basement where keg parties were held, but it wasn't Malone's apartment either. It had walls and a cement floor and exposed piping hanging from the ceiling. It was clean, without that layer of dust that covered everything else in the house. It smelled like bleach. Blood seeped onto the floor, pooling on the uneven ground. A scalpel slipped from Malone's hand and clinked on the concrete. The blood soaked his PF flyers. An old man lay on a white table. Blood dripped from his head where his skull had been cracked open. There was no precise surgical slicing. This was closer to blunt force trauma. A shelf on the wall held 6 jars containing brains preserved like gefilte fish. Pride washed over him, the kind he hadn't felt since his last NHL goal. But it came with a sickness, like the queasy unease he felt when an opposing ice gladiator's head hit the ice and the concussed fighter had to be wheeled out of the arena on a stretcher. Then a vision hit him of scooping a brain out of a skull and dropping it into preservatives while its owner lay bloody and dead on a gurney. Malone vomited on the floor. Something rotten had happened in that house. The old had died there by the most unnatural of causes. Tortured. Or was it an experiment? Was the torture just a sadistic side effect of the maddest science? The victims were old. The jellied heads in the most recent fucked up memory were wrinkled. They were preserved at an age that countered the logic of preservation. They were already stale by the time they were put in the jars. Were they trophies? Vile, ugly, and grotesque souvenirs from a journey to the depths of depravity in this cruel gangland basement? Were they saved for posterity or for a more useful, sinister purpose? Were they more than mere macabre decorations? They must be. That's what a real detective would have thought. Deeper than the surface. It was deeper. Something this bizarre couldn't be what it seemed. But what did it seem to be? Malone had no idea. So he'd dig deeper. He had to. Even if he had to go 20,000 leagues below the surface, Malone would keep digging. The most innocuous surroundings yielded the most sinister findings. That neighbor, such a quiet man, just an excitable boy who wouldn't harm a fly. That's where the real terror lies. Not in the behemoths who crack skulls for glory and a paycheck. It was in the seemingly meek that had inherited this earth.